Hello and welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, a special episode of the podcast where we're not going to focus on any specific event, but we're reacting to the news that Gordon Ryan is going to go after double gold at the ADCC World Championships this year. I'm Ross. I'm joined as always by Calum. Calum is the Oracle's roving reporter. He broke the news to me overnight about Gordon's intentions. Calum, let us know the story, please.
Yeah, so about 11:30 last night, it was on Instagram, and I saw a post by Gordon Ryan posting a photo from him at the last ADCC Worlds with the caption, August 2024, 7 golds and 1 more record broken. So right now, Gordon has 5 ADCC gold medals to his name. We've spoken about before that we thought he was maybe just going to do the superfight division given his current health problems, but for him to say 7 golds, that obviously is going to be 2 more, implying that he's going to do a weight class and the absolute, and to say 1 more record broken is to say that he's going to break Andre Galval's 6 ADCC gold record.
Okay, can I question something there? I believe you said that he's going to do weight class and absolute.
Sorry, yeah, I said the same thing to you when I messaged you. So yeah, weight class and super fight, not weight class and absolute.
So to be clear on that, the golds from the super fights do count towards your record in the ADCC.
Yeah.
Several of Andre Galval's gold medals are through super fights.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So Gordon looks like he's going to add the weight class to his schedule at this ADCC. So first things first, the super fight against Yuri Simoes. We're thinking that Gordon's highly favoured to win that match. Yes?
Yeah, surely the most one-sided ADCC super fight we've had, I would think.
Okay, we'll need to go back into the record books and have a look, but let's just say that Gordon makes it to 6 by winning that super fight. Then the 7 is going to come through the weight class. Calum, talk us through some of the competitors that Gordon could come up against in the over 99 kilogram weight division.
Yeah, so we don't know for sure what weight class he would be doing. Gordon, I think, depending on how his health is, if he's healthy, I think he usually kind of kicks about around 230. And then he would only have to be just under 220 to make the under 99. So he could theoretically do either, but we think that because he did over 99 last year, that he's going to do that, and as well that he's going to leave some room for Nicholas Merigali, despite having 2 of his own teammates in over 99 as well. So those 2 teammates are Dan Monosoyu, who was always going to be in that division, and then, as we spoke about recently as well, Nicholas Merigali breaking the news that Luke Griffiths is going to be moving up to over 99. So what that means for ADCC, they really don't like the whole thing that happens in the IBJJF with teammates kind of closing out finals together and ruining the final. So what they do is, if there's 2 teammates in one division, then what they will do is they will have those 2 guys face in the second round, given that they both get through the first round. So we saw this with Gary and Gordon in the absolute division. And then if there is 3 competitors, which will apply for the over 99 if that's what Gordon is doing, we saw this in the 88 kilo division from last ADCC Worlds. And what they'll do is they'll have 2 athletes from the same team face off in the first round, the lower seeded 2, and then they'll face the higher seeded athlete. So we saw this with Josh Hinger versus Ty, and then the winner of that went on to fight their teammate Lucas Barbosa. So that presumably is going to be what is going to happen this time around as well. The winner versus Dan and Luke will have Gordon in the second round if they're all in the same division.
And any other names that you think Gordon might come up against?
Yeah, we've got Nicky Rod, another potential match with him. Just try to think of some of the names that we had in that division last time.
Victor Hugo?
Yeah, Victor Hugo, that'll be a good one to see again. The only guy that Gordon didn't sub last time around. Felipe Pena as well could be doing the over 99, so some good names in that division for sure.
And friend of the pod, friend of each of us.
Yeah, Mark McQueen, who may have Gordon first round if he's the lowest seed, depending on where they seed the trial winners.
I believe Heikki Jessala, former European trials winner, kind of campaigned for a match with Gordon at the last ADCC, and then so was slotted in as the first round opponent. Now, I don't know that for sure. I just seem to remember hearing some chat online that he wanted that match, so they gave it to him.
I think that has happened before. I think Lachlan campaigned to get Lucas Lepre first round, and Mo was happy to oblige with that, so that sounds about right.
Because I don't know where Mark will place in the seeds. You would tend to think that the European trials winners and the Asia Oceania trials winners will be ranked towards the bottom of the 16, but it depends how they weight it. I don't know, but I think if you wanted Gordon, you could state your case that that's the match to make in the first round. So we'll see what Mark does. Maybe we'll get him on the pod and see if he would like a match with Gordon Ryan. Not that we're trying to stir stuff up. I just think it would be awesome if you in your jiu-jitsu career you said you were able to get a match against Gordon Ryan at ADCC. Like, that would be absolutely legendary. And the fact that coming out of Europe or Asia Oceania, that you're going to get one of the big seeds first round, that's unavoidable. Why not get Gordon? If you were to beat Gordon, you'd be instantly led status.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Not even beating Gordon, but if you could take Gordon down or have a look at taking his back, I think that alone would be enough to sell some DVDs and promote yourself a lot, to be honest, even just looking like you're maybe getting a move off on Gordon. So yeah, I think that would be quite exciting.
Okay, so some other things came up as we were discussing this. So first off, Gordon doing the weight class and the super fight leaves the door open for the absolute division. And I say that, let's just say if Gordon was in it, he'd be favoured to win it. So it's not that he's absolutely unbeatable, but just saying it leaves the door open. Someone else will definitely win that division if Gordon's not in it. Now, some of the chat online has been that Meregali's out for double gold this time, right? And he's doing under 99 kilograms and the absolute. So if Gordon was to win his super fight, he would be in the super fight in 2026 defending his title. And if Meregali was to win the absolute, he would be the contender to go up against Gordon in 2026. But apparently, and I haven't seen this, but apparently Gordon's already said that that's unlikely to happen. So I don't know how the super fight will look in 2026 should both those guys win. What do you think about this kind of situation that could brew there, Calum?
Yeah, so my thoughts on that are that I don't think Mo will be very happy if, like I've kind of stated, they don't really like teammates going to the finals and closing out, so I don't think he would be very happy if they ruin his big super fight finale and absolute divisions by just kind of taking turnabout, winning it 1 year each, and then pulling out of the super fight to fight each other. As far as what I think will happen with that, I think there's two sides to consider. So one side is I've heard Giancarlo speaking about the kind of culture at New Wave and Gordon's views on kind of facing his own teammates that and we've seen this in the past. Obviously he had a match with Gary Tonin before. Giancarlo had a match with Meregali in the absolute of the last ADCC, and I think how Giancarlo put it, that Gordon said pretty much that if he's going to lose to someone, he would rather lose to his own teammate rather than someone else. So that kind of maybe paints the picture a bit of the culture in that gym of how they view facing their teammates. Okay, I'd rather lose to my teammate in this situation than lose to someone else, so they're quite happy to fight each other. That's one point of view, so that kind of makes me think that they maybe will have a match against each other. And the other point of view is kind of the marketing side of it. So obviously Gordon's marketed himself as the kind of top grappler in the sport, and Meregali's kind of building himself up to that sort of status as well. So I don't know if that would maybe mess with their own like marketing vibes and what they're looking to do. I don't know if John's got some input on that as well. So that's kind of like the two sides of it, how I think that would go. I think if they do decide to go up against each other and kind of build that over the next couple of years, providing that Gordon wins the super fight and Meregali wins the absolute, I think that could be absolutely massive. But obviously that's going to yet to be seen whether that'll happen or not.
And it's going to be tough for Meregali to win the absolute division. I mean, he has looked really, really good in his matches of late, but he could run up against, maybe like 2 or 3 matches in a row against really big, good guys.
Yeah.
He could get the likes of just say you got like Felipe Pena, Nicky Rod, and Victor Hugo, like back to back to back. That is a tall order to come through.
Yeah, I think the size thing is like a big thing as well. Especially the kind of like style we've seen him use, like wearing on people's heads, like his wrestling game, like given the kind of sheer size difference between him and a guy like Victor Hugo, who's like plus 99 and like very much over that 99 kilo cut off. Then yeah, I don't know how his game will transfer over into that. Obviously, that'll be very interesting to see. But yeah, I think that will be a big challenge for him. Try to think back to his run at the Absolute. Obviously, he had some smaller guys like Ty. He lost to Yuri, who he beat in the weight class. So I don't remember him beating anyone like particularly huge in that ADCC. He's not had anyone like that much bigger than him, if I can think, like recently. So yeah, I think that will be an interesting challenge to see him come up against like some of these really top guys that are well over the 99 kilo weight division.
Especially if he has some absolute wars in the weight class as well, could have a really difficult rematch against Kynan.
Yeah.
We don't know. Kynan's form can be variable on his day. Absolute nightmare to deal with. So if that goes to like a double overtime, like your resources are going to be seriously depleted in the absolute.
Yeah, and as we spoke about the kind of teammates facing teammates, if Luke or Big Dan jump into the absolute, they're both huge guys, and maybe with kind of them being previous training partners, that is going to be like difficult to really get their moves off on each other. So that'll maybe be like a potentially very fatiguing matchup for him as well.
So let's say, don't get ahead of yourself looking at all this. Yeah. But very interesting talking points. And it's great that in Meregali, I think we've now got an interesting contender against Gordon. I think Gordon's kind of gone through the competition in his weight class, right? Now, plenty of them are out gunning for revenge. Like Nicky Rod would like not more than a rematch against Gordon, and I'm sure Nicky Rod, the confident individual that he is, will back himself to get the win. Felipe Pena probably wants another crack. Victor Hugo will want another crack, but like so far Gordon's beating these guys. So to have someone else on the horizon, and we're starting to think, what would happen if like Meregali kept his upward trajectory going? 2 years from now, he's going to go up against Gordon. I think it's great for the sport that there's like a contender out there that Gordon might have to face, but then it's just like the other side of it is like trying to work out how it can happen. It's a bit difficult given the circumstances, his teammates and stuff like that, right? So,
well, because it's such a big match, it's maybe something that they could maybe negotiate with ADCC to get paid for it, but it's like kind of like the Tyne and Mika situation. It's like everyone's really wanting to see that match. Like it could potentially generate a lot of revenue. So what is the incentive for those guys to do that at IBJJF Worlds or ADCC? For free, obviously you'll win some money if you win the super fight, but they could potentially get paid maybe like upwards of 100,000 if they do that at a separate show. So that's another factor to maybe consider with it as well.
Now you mentioned a name slightly earlier, Mo.
Mm-hmm.
So for anyone that doesn't know, Mo Jassim is the head organizer for the ADCC, and Gordon committing, it seems, to do the weight class, I think is a huge win for Mo and a huge win for the ADCC at a time when they were feeling, no doubt, a little bit of pressure from Craig Jones and the Craig Jones Invitational. So if Gordon's committed to competing in a lot of matches at the ADCC, then that is a huge win for him, because he is by far still the biggest name, the biggest draw in the sport. And I would assume, given the heat between New Wave and B Team, that even although a lot of money might be available, I don't know if Gordon's going to do Craig Jones's tournament. Although it would be exciting if he did, right? If Gordon rocked up. But him committing to the ADCC, massive win for the ADCC, I would say.
Yeah.
Calum agrees. So Mo will be very happy. Now, we were chatting this morning about Gordon coming back or committing to the weight class, and immediately conversation turned to Gordon's positioning in the sport all time. I'll say one thing about this potential match with Meregali. If Meregali continued his ascent, and then when Gordon went up against him in 2026 and Gordon won, that would that would add a lot to Gordon's achievements, I think. You know, if you beat greats, it just adds to so much to your resume. But the inevitable discussion around about GOATs was happening this morning between Calum and I, and where Gordon ranks. Now, first off, Calum, what does Gordon classify himself as?
So, Gordon, I don't think has ever claimed to be the GOAT of Jiu-Jitsu generally. He claims and markets himself as the GOAT of no-gi Jiu-Jitsu or submission grappling. Right.
And what do you think my position was that I was trying to articulate this morning?
So you kind of had the position that you didn't really care about who the GOAT of no-gi was. You only cared about the GOAT of Jiu-Jitsu as a whole and where Gordon ranks in that.
Yeah. So essentially, Calum and I are both fans of basketball. So this was probably the analogy I arrived at that made the most sense to both of us. That we can talk about who's the best shooter in the NBA, right? Now, we both agree it's Steph Curry, but that's by the by. But no one, you can have that debate. I'm not saying you can, right? But no one cares, really, right? But as soon as you mention who's the GOAT of basketball and you pick either MJ or you pick LeBron, you've got to strap yourself in because you're going to be in an argument with whoever's on the other side, right? And that's not even to say that you can't bring other names into the mix. So I'm not really, I think this King of No-Gi is a narrative created by Gordon, and I'm just not going to play the game that he wants to be played. I think it's the King of Grappling that matters. On the Jiu Jitsu Oracle future episodes, we're going to do some deep dives into the GOAT status, right? But I think as well, another one I was using was tennis. Who's the best tennis player? Is it Roger Federer? Is it Novak Djokovic? Is it Rafa Nadal? You could have that debate. Who's the king of clay? Who's the king of grass? Who's the king of hardcore? Nobody cares, you know? No one's having debates about that. We just want to know who's the best, right? So, I'm not interested in who's the king of no-gi. I also think, at the time, the no-gi scene is, so different now to what it was, you know? It was pretty much ADCC, going back, 20 years, right? Now, you've got loads of tournaments, and you can totally blow up your record facing undersized guys in WNOs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So your record can look amazing. So I think the landscape's changed massively as well as the fact that it's as the no-gi grappling. Also, I think the best guys, I'll come to you in a sec. The best guys, they're doing both to me. Mika Galvao, if he can do both, then there's no excuse as to anyone else not doing both. I'd say if Gordon put on the gi, won a gi worlds, that's going to add much more weight to his potential GOAT status than winning another ADCC title. Anyway, Calum.
So regardless of whether you care about the no-gi GOAT, do you acknowledge it as a thing, and do you acknowledge Gordon Ryan is the no-gi GOAT regardless of whether you care about it?
No, and no. And also, I'm the editor of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, so I will say that like the no-gi GOAT discussion is just not worthy editorially, right? But what I am willing to have a discussion about is who's the king of the ADCC, right? Because that's like a self-contained tournament with specific rules that have gone back ages, and loads of people have competed in it. So I think like I think having a debate about round about like who's the GOAT of the ADCC, that to me is an interesting point. But as for like who's the GOAT at grappling, I think like you just have to take everything into account. You know,
You're saying you probably need to define grappling a bit more though, because then we're taking into consideration judo and wrestling and all sorts.
yeah, and you can take it like MMA. You know, like.
So we are taking that into consideration.
Sure, you can, you know, like that's the joy of debate. You know, it's like, well, because like let's be honest, right? Who's the GOAT, right? It's just a made up thing, you know. Like, what are the parameters of it? Like, that's the fun of it. That's like when you're discussing like MJ against LeBron, you know. It's like your parameters might be different to my parameters, but that's what like keeps the debate going. So, I think like the GOAT at grappling, yeah, like, you know, you could go into like wrestling and MMA and stuff like that, and if you add those things to it, like the results are going to be very different. So I'll say for us, as we head towards the ADCC, I think we should keep the debate of GOAT status regarding no-gi to the ADCC. And then if you want to have a debate about the GOAT status of jiu-jitsu, then we can add the worlds and the gi to the ADCC no-gi and have a debate round about there, right? But as for this, who's the best no-gi, I just don't even like care, you know what I mean? I just don't think the question.
Well, I think it's Gordon, but we'll stick with the jiu-jitsu as a whole or ADCC one going forward.
So you think it's Gordon, and that's fine. And we're going to get into why Calum thinks it's Gordon, right? But we're going to throw up some other contenders as well. So I'll go first. I'm firmly Team Roger. And what I'll do right now is I'll just throw a couple of reasons why I think it's Roger. What
about jiu-jitsu or ADCC?
ADCC.
Okay.
I also think it's jiu-jitsu. I think Roger's the GOAT jiu-jitsu, right? But I think he's a contender. Well, here's the thing. I've not firmly made my choice yet.
Okay.
But what I am starting to do is like have instinctual thoughts and then starting to dive down into their resumes. Okay. Now, what we're going to do in the Jiu Jitsu Oracle is we're going to keep this discussion going all the way to the ADCC and through the ADCC. So I'm not going to play my hand right now, Calum, and give away everything, right? So you can get one up on me, and then you can start going away doing your research, you know, knowing where I stand, right? But I will say Roger Gracie, in his favour, is an unprecedented run in 2005, weight and absolute champion, 8 out of 8 submissions, and back-to-back, he beat 3 guys who were in their prime and at the absolute top end of grappling, Verdum, Jean-G Ribeiro, and Jacare, right? And I think like that was just off the top of my head. I wrote that down. So he then came back in 2007 for his super fight where he beat Ainamo, who had previously beaten him in 2003 when he got the bronze. So I think like Roger's historic run in 2005, he's a weight and absolute champion, and he's won a super fight as well. Like that's an amazing resume, right? Now, I challenge Calum to come up with some names. So Calum, like, who's your first name that you're coming with that is in the discussion? We're not putting it down hard and fast right now that this guy is the GOAT. Just who's in the running?
Gordon.
Yes.
We've spoken about, I think Marcelo Garcia.
Okay. Tell me about Marcelo.
Okay, so Marcelo is a 4-time ADCC champion, and I think we need to clarify that kind of, when we speak about some of the smaller guys, you need to take into consideration that it's not realistic for these guys to be winning the absolute division. So when we see guys winning the absolute divisions, usually it's going to be like the over and under 99 guys. Occasionally we'll see 88 guy doing pretty well. We've seen Marcelo doing very well for a 77 guy in the absolute division. But when we look at some of the 66 and 77 kilo athletes, their overall titles, because they can't win the absolute realistically and they won't make it to the super fight, is going to be lower. So I think that's something to take into consideration. But that being said, in the 77 kilo weight class, he has won ADCC 4 times, and I believe 1 silver, and I believe he got silver in the absolute as well. So that is amazing in and of itself, but also his submission rate in the ADCC is super high as well. So just having a little scroll through some of his wins. So his first ADCC, see a submission win, a points win, a submission win, a submission win, a submission win, and then a points loss. His next one, we see a submission win, points win, a submission win, a submission win, a submission win, a submission win, and then a submission loss, another submission win there. So you can kind of see how many submissions he's getting in these competitions as well. And one of the ADCCs, he made a super deep run in the absolute, losing to Robert Drysdale as well as winning his weight class. So I think that's his case for being up there in the GOAT discussion for ADCC.
1 match away from an absolutely historic, legendary run.
Yeah. So if he'd won that match, and say he'd won it by submission, he would have equaled Hodger's 8 wins, 8 submissions, and he would have done that as a 77 kilo athlete, which for me would have put him far above Hodger's achievement, just because of how difficult that is to do with that size disadvantage.
But this is the fun of the discussion. He didn't, did he? And no. Hodger did. So, but yeah, Marcelo definitely up there in the chat about ADCC. And Calum, you're absolutely right that we need to have a good think about people's ability to match the achievements of others. So if you're an under 66 guy, it's going to be very hard to rack up the same amount of titles as someone who's able to do weight and absolutes. Also,
yeah, go
on. Well, you go first, because I'm going to lead this into another.
Yeah. It's the same in IBJJF. So like Bushesh and Hodger both having 10 plus titles, and then comparing them to guys like Hafa with 6. Obviously, a lot of their titles are coming from winning on the same year, winning weight and absolute, which like realistically isn't an option for Hafa being a featherweight athlete. So yeah, just kind of same parallels over to IBJJF as well as ADCC.
Although that said, sometimes you can get a huge amount of titles dominating a weight class that can fluctuate in depth. You know, so I'm thinking like Bruno Malfacini.
Yeah.
Calum, you're nodding.
Yeah, I say yeah, Bruno. Yeah.
Yeah. Why are you agreeing with me?
Yeah. So I think is Bruno 10-time world champion of the gi as well. Yeah. So him being at the kind of lower scale of weight classes, not as many human beings really walk around at that weight, and like you say, some of the competition in that weight class maybe not as high as others. So yeah, that's another thing to take into consideration as well.
So Calum's parched. I'll let him get a drink as I talk about my next contender. And this is going back a little bit, but he is no doubt an absolute legend of the ADCC scene, and it's Ricardo Arona. Now, one thing I was going to talk about just before I get into his achievements is longevity. Now, his time doing ADCC is incredibly short. I think all his achievements come over a 3-year period, right? And then he focused on MMA. So, if he'd have kept doing it, who knows how many titles he'd have racked up. Now, on the one hand, you can say, well, he didn't keep doing it, so he didn't get the titles, and it's kind of irrelevant. But on the other hand, like, I think you just got to look at like his spell of dominance as it stands. So he is undefeated in ADCC. He's had no points scored against him. He's a 2-time under 99 kilogram champion. He's won an absolute division, and he's won a super fight against Mark Kerr, who's one of the greatest ADCC competitors of his time as well. And we talk about strength of schedule being a huge feather in your cap if it's strong. And in 2001, now I want you to think about these guys being like in their prime of the time, not looking at them now and not judging them necessarily against like competitors these days. Like, let's look at jiu-jitsu like as it was in 2001. So Arona put together back-to-back wins against Saulo Ribeiro, Vitor Belfort, and Jean-Jacques Machado, right? So like to go through like that caliber of grappler one after one after one, super impressive. Now, I will say that not the highest submission rate for Arona, and we weight that really heavily on the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, and we have done podcasts in the past about people who are above the 80% submission. We think like puts you like high in the elite category. Focused on Mika Galvao for that one, but we went to other guys that are there. Ricardo Arona, a lot of points wins, but a lot of dominant victories against a lot of good grapplers. And yeah, I think he's firmly in discussion for like who's the great in the ADCC. So Calum, give me one more.
So I've got two guys in the same weight class. You asked me to pick one. I'm gonna go with Rafa Mendes. So he is a two-time ADCC champion and one-time silver medalist, and at the time, I think maybe Cade broke this last time, but at the time he was the youngest guy to ever win ADCC. Pretty good submission rate as well, beating his rival, who was the other guy I was going to talk about, Cabrinha, in the first one and in the second one as well, and then lost the third one to Cabrinha where he got silver. So I think anytime you've got like another GOAT in your division as well and you're able to beat that guy a couple times, that's really good for your case. The submission rate's really good. The age that he did it as well, two back-to-back and then one silver as well. He's not realistically going to be winning the absolute, so taking that into consideration as well.
And here's another thing that we need to think about: style points.
Yeah.
Rafa scores high on the style points, yes?
Yeah, some of the best highlight reels of all time.
So again, Ricardo Arona, not going to score the highest on style points. Really wrestling heavy game. But Rafa Mendes, Marcelo Garcia, some of these lighter guys, maybe that'll help their case, especially when it goes up against absolute titles. So that it's not necessarily they're going to win that, but if they're like winning their divisions by using like incredibly exciting, innovative jiu-jitsu, I think that like lends itself to big points in this debate. Calum's nodded. We'll take that. Yes. Now we're going to get way more into the discussion about ADCC GOATs as we go, but we just want to drop it in just now, lay the table, and if you want to give us your suggestions, please get in touch with the Jiu Jitsu Oracle. Calum's already mentioned the IBJJF Worlds there, and we're going to do a big preview. Hopefully we've got a special guest that's going to help us along the way as we dive into all the black belt divisions and give our thoughts on who's going to win. And we're also looking at like the big stories that could happen, like guys going back to back, winning titles in different weight classes, guys getting up towards like 5 titles, 6 titles, can reigns of dominance continue, all that. But there is one event on the horizon that I very quickly want to touch on. It's happening late this week in Brazil, and it's the Brazilian qualifiers for the Aiga tournament. And Team Kasai have put together what could be the best roster of grapplers that have ever competed in a team event. I know Team Adolfo had a great roster at the last Aiga tournament, and there's been some great quintet teams along the way. But this Kasai team, Calum, off the top of your head, I've got the guys written down. Can you remember who's in it? Anyone?
Got here, I've got the Taki brothers.
Yes.
Believe we had Kynan.
Yes.
Did we have Pato?
Yes.
Okay. That'll do me.
You've done well there. Well done. So quickly, we've got Junior Casio. We have got Fabricio Andre, Renato Canuto, Sebastian Rodriguez, Pedro Mourinho, and Roberto Jimenez, I think, makes up the team. So, some amount of firepower. We'll have a look at that event and let you know if anything exciting that has happened. But I think Team Kasai would be heavily favoured to win that, unless Team New Wave rocks up as a surprise appearance or something like that. But even then, who are they going to have in the smaller divisions? Okay, so that concludes this episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, doing a bit of a look at the GOAT of the ADCC off the bat of the news that Gordon Ryan is going to seemingly do the super fight and the weight class at the World Championships. Tune into the next Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, which is going to focus on the IBJJF Worlds